The rifle gleamed in the afternoon sun, its barrel freshly polished, and Penelope knew without being told that her father had just traded her life away for it. She stood in the dusty yard of their failing homestead outside Lordsburg, New Mexico, her hands clenched in the folds of her worn calico dress, watching as her father examined the Winchester repeater with more care than he had ever shown her. The man who had brought the rifle sat atop a paint horse, his weathered face expressionless beneath the brim of his hat. He was maybe 40, with cruel eyes and a mouth that suggested he smiled only when causing pain. "She is healthy?" the man asked, his voice carrying the rough edge of someone who had spent too many years shouting over cattle and wind. "Healthy enough," her father replied, not looking at her. He had not looked at her properly in the 3 years since her mother died. 18 years old, can cook and clean. Knows her place. Penelope felt her stomach twist. The drought had taken everything from them over the past 2 years, every crop, every hope, every shred of dignity her father might have once possessed. But she had not imagined it would come to this. The man on the horse was Marcus Cray, a rancher from up north near Santa Fe, known for his temper and his habit of going through workers the way other men went through whiskey. "I will take her now," Cray said, dismounting with the stiff movements of a man who spent too long in the saddle. He walked toward her, and Penelope took an involuntary step back. "Pa," she said, hating the tremor in her voice. "Pa, please." Her father finally looked at her, and what she saw in his eyes was worse than hatred. It was nothing at all, just empty desperation and the hollow relief of a man who had solved his immediate problem. "You will go with Mr. Cray. You will do as he says. It is decided." Before Cray could reach her, another horse appeared on the path leading to their homestead. The rider sat easy in the saddle, and even from a distance, Penelope could see he was younger than Cray, probably in his mid-20s. He wore the practical clothing of a working cowboy, his hat tilted back enough to show dark hair and a sun-bronzed face. "Cray," the newcomer said as he approached, his voice carrying a lazy warning. "Did not expect to see you this far south." Cray's hand dropped to his gun, but he did not draw. "Elias Keller, this is not your concern." Elias Keller brought his horse to a stop about 10 feet away, his eyes moving from Cray to Penelope to her father and back again. His gaze was assessing, intelligent, and when it lingered on her for a moment, she saw something in it that she had not seen in a long time, recognition of her as a person, not property. "Seems like it might be," Elias said. He looked at her father. "You are Martin Thompson." Her father straightened slightly, perhaps hearing something in Elias's tone that suggested consequence. "I am. Heard in town you were looking to sell some land. I have been searching for a place to settle, start my own ranch. Came out to talk terms." Elias's eyes moved back to Penelope, then to the rifle in her father's hands. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "But I see you have other business today." "The land is still available," her father said quickly, greed sparking in his eyes. 200 acres, good grazing land, just needs water." "Needs more than that," Elias said. His tone remained conversational, but Penelope heard steel beneath it. "Needs someone who knows what they are doing. Needs investment." He paused deliberately. "I have that Winchester you are holding there worth maybe $30. Land like yours in this condition might fetch 200 if you are lucky. Seems like poor arithmetic to me, Mr. Thompson." Cray stepped forward, his face darkening. "I said this does not concern you." "I am making it my concern," Elias replied, his voice hardening. His hand rested casually on his thigh, inches from his own gun. "See, I knew Marcus Cray up in Colorado before he had to leave in a hurry. Know all about what happened to that Shoshone girl he bought off her brother. Found her body in a ravine 3 months later. The air seemed to freeze. Penelope felt her heart hammering against her ribs. "You are calling me a liar." Cray's voice was dangerous. "I am stating facts," Elias said. "Now, I figure Mr. Thompson here did not know about your history when he made this arrangement, so I am offering him a better deal." He looked at her father. "I will buy your land for $300, cash, right now. That is enough to get you to California, start over somewhere the drought has not destroyed everything." Her father's eyes gleamed. "300, on one condition," Elias continued. "Your daughter does not go with Cray. Whatever agreement you made, it is void. You cannot do that." Cray exploded. "I paid for her fair and square. With a stolen rifle, I would wager," Elias said calmly. "I see the marking on the stock from here. Belongs to the Butterfield Stage Company. They have been looking for the man who robbed their coach outside of Tucson last month." Cray's hand moved toward his gun, but Elias was faster. Not drawing, just shifting so his intent was clear. "Do not be stupid, Marcus. I am faster than you and you know it. Take your rifle and go, or stay and explain to the marshal in Lordsburg where you got it." For a long moment the world seemed balanced on a knife's edge. Then Cray snarled, grabbed the Winchester from Penelope's father and mounted his horse. "This is not finished, Keller." "Yes, it is," Elias replied. "And if I hear about you buying people again, I will make sure the law hears every detail of what you did in Colorado." Cray dug his heels into his horse and galloped away, leaving a cloud of dust hanging in the still air. Penelope found she could not move, could not quite process what had just happened. Her father was already talking, his voice eager as he stepped toward Elias. "You said $300. Elias dismounted, his movements deliberate. He pulled a worn leather pouch from his saddlebag and counted out bills with careful precision. "300, as promised. But Mr. Thompson, I want you to understand something clearly. If you ever try to sell another human being, I will come back, and we will have a different kind of conversation." Her father took the money with shaking hands, not even pretending shame. "The girl is not your concern anymore. The deal was that she leaves." "Then make her part of the land sale," Elias said flatly. "Sign over a statement that she is free of any obligation to you." "I do not have paper for that kind of thing." "I do." Elias pulled a small notebook and a pencil from his pocket. He wrote something quickly, then handed it to her father. "Sign." Her father scrawled his name without reading it, then looked at Penelope with those empty eyes. "You are on your own now. I am leaving for California in the morning." He turned and walked into the house without another word, without goodbye, without even a moment of hesitation. Penelope stood frozen, feeling as though the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. Elias watched her father go, his expression unreadable. Then he turned to her, and his voice softened. "Miss Thompson, I apologize for the bluntness of that transaction. But I did not see another way to get you clear of Cray without bloodshed." She found her voice, though it came out smaller than she would have liked. "You bought me just like he did." "No," Elias said firmly. "I bought land from a desperate man, and I made sure you were not sold to a killer." "There is a difference." He paused, then held out the paper her father had signed. "This says you are released from all obligations to your father and free to make your own choices. It is not legally binding in any real sense, but it is something." Penelope took the paper with trembling hands, reading the words he had written in neat, careful script. Her father's scrawled signature sat at the bottom like an ending. "What happens to me now?" she asked. Elias was quiet for a moment, his eyes searching her face. "That is your choice." "I meant what I said about buying the land. I have been saving for 5 years to start my own ranch, and this property, despite its condition, has potential. There is a good stream that runs through the northern section. With work, it could support cattle and horses. "You want me to leave," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I want you to have a choice," he corrected. "I can take you into Lordsburg. There is a boarding house there run by Mrs. Fletcher, a good woman. She might have work for you, and you could build a life of your own. Or," he hesitated, "if you want, you could stay here. I need help getting this ranch started. Someone who knows the land can keep house, help with the work. I would pay you fair wages, and you would have a place to sleep and food to eat." "Why would you do that?" Penelope asked, suspicion and hope warring in her chest. "You do not know me." "No, I do not," Elias agreed. "But I know what it is like to have no choices. My parents died when I was 15, and I spent 3 years working for a man who treated his dogs better than his hands. When I finally got free, I swore that if I ever had the means, I would make sure others had the choices I did not." He met her eyes directly. "I am not offering charity, Miss Thompson. I am offering work, fair wages, and respect. Nothing more." "Nothing more," she repeated, testing the words. "I give you my word," Elias said. "You would have your own space, your own privacy. You could leave whenever you wanted. The choice would always be yours." Penelope looked back at the house where she had lived her entire life, at the peeling paint and the sagging porch, at the windows that had not seen her mother's curtains in 3 years. She thought about Lordsburg, a town where she knew no one, where she would be just another girl trying to survive. Then she looked at Elias Keller, this stranger who had appeared like an answer to a prayer she had been too afraid to voice. "I want to stay," she said. "At least for now. I want to help with the ranch." Something that might have been relief crossed Elias's face. "All right, then. We have a lot of work ahead of us." Her father left before dawn the next morning, taking what little he owned and disappearing down the road toward the setting moon. Penelope did not watch him go. She was already in the kitchen, starting breakfast for herself and Elias, beginning the first day of her new life. The work was harder than she had imagined. Elias had not exaggerated the state of the land. The drought had ravaged everything, leaving the earth cracked and stubborn. But he worked alongside her every day, never asking her to do anything he would not do himself. He repaired fences while she cleaned out the old barn. He rode into town for supplies while she planted a kitchen garden with seeds he bought from the general store. He fixed the roof while she mended the holes in the walls where desert wind had worked its way through. They spoke little at first, both focused on the overwhelming task of bringing the ranch back to life. But in the evenings after supper, they would sit on the porch and watch the sun set over the mountains, and slowly they began to talk. "Why did you really help me?" Penelope asked one evening about a week after her father had left. The question had been burning in her mind, demanding an answer. Elias was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on the horizon. "My mother was Lipan Apache," he finally said. "My father was a trader who fell in love with her when he was traveling through Texas. Her family did not approve, but they married anyway. They were happy, I think, for the years we had together." "What happened?" "Cholera," Elias said simply. "Swept through our camp when I was 15. Took both of them within a week." He paused. "My mother's family did not want me, said I was too white. The white communities did not want me either. Said I was too Apache. I learned early what it means to be property, to be something people trade or use or discard." Penelope felt her throat tighten. "I am sorry." "It was a long time ago," Elias said, but his voice carried old pain. "The man I worked for after they died, he liked to remind me that I should be grateful. That he was doing me a favor by letting me work for almost nothing, sleep in his barn, eat scraps. When I finally left, I had nothing but the clothes on my back and the horse I stole from him." "You stole his horse?" Elias's mouth curved slightly. "He owed me 3 years of wages. I figured the horse was fair trade. I have been working honest since then, saving everything I could, waiting for the chance to have something of my own." He looked at her directly. "When I saw you standing there, saw the look in your eyes, I saw myself at 15. I could not walk away from that." "Thank you," Penelope said softly. "I have not said that properly. Thank you for giving me a choice." "You are welcome," Elias replied. "And Penelope, you can still make a different choice. If you want to leave, if you want to try the town, I will take you. No judgment, no debt." She thought about it, really considered it. Then she shook her head. "I want to stay. I want to help make this ranch work. I want to see if we can actually do this." "Then we will do it together," Elias said, and the smile he gave her was warm and real. The weeks turned into months, and summer gave way to early autumn. The rains came late that year, but when they did, they were generous. The stream that ran through the northern section of the property swelled with life, and the land began to respond. The garden Penelope had planted flourished beyond her hopes, providing vegetables for their table and seeds for the next season. Elias bought 3 head of cattle from a rancher near Deeming and started building a herd, trading work and time for breeding stock. They developed a rhythm, an unspoken understanding of how they moved through their days. Elias would rise before dawn to tend the animals, and Penelope would have coffee ready when he came in. They would breakfast together, plan the day's work, then separate to their tasks. Lunch was often quick, eaten while still working, but dinner was their time. They would cook together, Elias proving surprisingly capable with a skillet, and then they would eat and talk until the stars came out. Penelope learned that Elias had educated himself, reading every book he could borrow or buy, teaching himself numbers and history and science. He had a thoughtful way of looking at the world, questioning assumptions, always seeking to understand. She found herself telling him things she had never spoken aloud, about her mother's death, about the slow dissolution of her father's spirit, about the loneliness of being invisible in her own home. "You are not invisible," Elias said one evening when she had shared a particularly painful memory. "You are one of the most present people I have ever met." "Present, you pay attention," he explained, "to everything. The way the wind shifts before rain, the way the cattle move when they are content, the way the bread dough feels when it is ready. You are always noticing, always learning. That is a rare quality." Penelope felt warmth spread through her chest. No one had ever spoken to her like this, had ever suggested she had qualities worth noting. "You notice things too." "We are a good team then," Elias said, and the way he looked at her made her heart skip. It was in October, when the cottonwoods turned gold and the air carried the first hint of winter, that everything changed. Elias had ridden to Lordsburg for supplies, leaving Penelope alone at the ranch for the day. She was in the garden, harvesting the last of the squash, when she heard horses approaching. Her first thought was that Elias had returned early, but when she looked up, she saw 3 riders, and her blood turned cold. Marcus Cray sat in the middle, flanked by 2 rough-looking men she did not recognize. Penelope stood slowly, her mind racing. The rifle was in the house, too far to reach before they got to her. The nearest neighbor was 5 miles away, too far to hear if she screamed. Cray dismounted with that same stiff movement she remembered, his face twisted with something ugly. "Thought I forgot about you. You need to leave," Penelope said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "This is private property." "Your property," Cray laughed. "You are just hired help." "Where is Keller?" She did not answer, and Cray's expression darkened. He took a step toward her. "I paid for you fair and square. That interfering half-breed stole what was mine." "I am not yours," Penelope said, anger giving her strength. "I am not anyone's." "We will see about that," Cray said. He gestured to his men. "Take her." Penelope ran. She did not think about it, just dropped the squash and sprinted toward the house. She heard the men laugh, heard boots hitting the ground as they pursued her. She was fast, but they were faster. Rough hands caught her arm, spun her around. She fought, kicking and scratching, landing a solid blow on one man's face that made him curse. But then the other grabbed her from behind, pinning her arms. "Feisty," Cray said, walking up slowly, enjoying her struggle. "I like that. Going to enjoy breaking you in." Then a gunshot split the air. Everyone froze. Penelope looked up to see Elias sitting on his horse at the edge of the yard, his rifle raised, his face carved from stone. "Let her go," Elias said, his voice deadly calm. Cray's men released Penelope immediately, stepping back. But Cray himself did not move, his hand hovering near his gun. "You going to shoot me, Keller, in front of witnesses?" "I am going to shoot you if you do not get back on your horse and leave," Elias replied. "Self-defense. You are trespassing. You assaulted someone under my protection." Any judge in New Mexico would call it justified. "You cannot protect her forever," Cray said. "I do not need to protect her forever," Elias said. "Just long enough for you to understand that this is finished. You touch her, you come near this property again, and I will not just shoot you. I will make sure everyone from here to Santa Fe knows what you did in Colorado. Every detail. Every moment of that girl's suffering before you killed her." Cray's face went white, then red. "You have no proof." "I have her brother," Elias said. "Found him 6 months ago, working on a ranch in Durango. He saw the whole thing, Cray. He saw you beat her, saw you throw her in that ravine while she was still breathing. He has been too afraid to speak up, but he will. I will make sure of it." For a long moment, Cray stood frozen, his hand still near his gun, weighing his options. Then, slowly, he stepped back. "You made an enemy today, Keller." "I made an enemy the day I stopped you from hurting someone," Elias replied. "I can live with that. Can you live with the noose?" Cray mounted his horse, his movements jerky with rage. His men followed quickly. They rode off without another word, but Penelope could feel Cray's hatred like a physical thing, hanging in the air long after the dust settled. Elias dismounted and came to her immediately, his rifle still in one hand. "Are you hurt?" "No," Penelope managed, though she was shaking. "You came back." "I forgot the list for the feed store," Elias said, his voice rough. "Turned around 5 miles out. Thank God I did." He reached out, hesitated, then gently touched her shoulder. "I am sorry. I should have known he would try something." "You could not have known," Penelope said. But her legs felt suddenly weak and she swayed. Elias caught her, his arm strong around her waist, his rifle clattering to the ground. "I have got you," he said softly. "You are safe now." She turned into him without thinking, pressing her face against his chest, feeling the solid warmth of him, the rapid beating of his heart. His arms came around her, holding her carefully as though she might break. "I was so scared," she whispered. "I know," Elias said. "I know, but you fought. You did not freeze. You were brave." They stood like that for a long moment, wrapped together in the October sunlight, and Penelope realized with a clarity that stole her breath that she did not want to let go. That somewhere between the hard work and the evening conversations, between the shared meals and the comfortable silences, she had fallen in love with Elias Keller. The thought terrified her. That evening they were both quiet. Elias cleaned his rifle obsessively, checking and rechecking the mechanism. Penelope made stew, but neither of them ate much. The fear had passed, but something else had taken its place, something unspoken and enormous. "I think you should go to town," Elias said finally, as they sat on the porch watching the stars emerge. "Stay with Mrs. Fletcher for a while, until I am sure Cray is really gone." "No," Penelope said immediately. "Penelope, no," she repeated firmly. "I am not leaving. This is my home now. Our home. I am not going to run just because some terrible man tried to scare me." He did not try to scare you, Elias said, his voice tight. He tried to take you, and he might try again. I cannot be here every moment. I cannot always protect you. Then teach me to protect myself, Penelope said. Teach me to shoot. Teach me to fight if I need to, but do not send me away. Elias looked at her, and in the starlight his eyes were dark and full of things she could not quite read. Why does it matter so much, staying here? Penelope took a breath, feeling as though she stood on the edge of something vast and terrifying. Because you are here. The words hung in the air between them, impossible to take back. Penelope, Elias said, his voice very careful. You do not have to say things like that. You do not owe me anything. I know, she said. This is not about debt. This is about, she stopped, gathered her courage. These months with you have been the happiest of my life. I wake up excited to see you. I find myself watching for you when you are out on the land. I think about you when I should be thinking about other things. And today, when Cray was here and you rode up, all I could think was that if something happened to you because of me, I would never forgive myself. Elias was very still. You are saying you have feelings for me. I am saying I love you, Penelope corrected, her heart hammering. I know it is probably foolish. I know you see me as someone you helped, someone you feel responsible for, but I needed you to know. I needed to be honest. For a terrible moment, Elias said nothing. Then he stood up, and Penelope thought he was going to walk away. Instead, he held out his hand to her. She took it, letting him pull her to her feet. They stood close together on the porch, his hand warm around hers. I have been trying so hard not to feel this, Elias said quietly. You came to me scared and trapped, and I promised myself I would not take advantage of that. I promised I would give you space to figure out what you wanted, who you wanted to be. But Penelope, watching you work beside me these months, talking with you every evening, learning who you are, it has been the sweetest torture I have ever known. Torture, she whispered. Because I have been falling in love with you since the first week, Elias said, his voice rough with honesty. And I have been terrified that you only stayed because you felt you had no choice, that your feelings were gratitude, not love. They are love, Penelope said, her free hand coming up to touch his face. They are absolutely love. Elias closed his eyes for a moment, leaning into her touch. Then he opened them, and what she saw there made her breath catch. I love you, he said. I love your strength and your courage and the way you see the world. I love how you notice everything, how you care about things deeply, how you never give up. I love you, and if you will have me, I would like to spend the rest of my life proving it to you. Yes, Penelope breathed. Yes. He kissed her then, soft and careful, as though she were something precious. His hands cupped her face gently, and she melted into him, into the sweetness of finally being able to show what she felt. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. We will do this right, Elias said. I will court you properly. We will get married if that is what you want. Everything will be your choice. I choose you, Penelope said simply. I will always choose you. They stood together on the porch until the stars wheeled overhead, planning their future in whispers and kisses, building a life with words and promises. The next few months were a golden time. Elias did court her properly, riding into Lordsburg to buy her small gifts, a length of blue ribbon for her hair, a book of poetry she could read by lamplight, a pair of sturdy boots for working on the ranch. He was respectful and careful, never pushing, always giving her space to set the pace. But the love between them was obvious to anyone who saw them together. They told no one in town at first, both wanting to keep their happiness private. But eventually, word spread the way it always did in small communities. Most people were kind, offering congratulations and best wishes. A few were less so, uncomfortable with Elias's mixed heritage or suspicious of their unconventional beginning. "Let them talk," Elias said one day when Penelope mentioned the whispers she had heard at the general store. "We know the truth of what we are." "And what is that?" Penelope asked, though she was smiling. "Two people who found each other when they needed it most," Elias said. "Two people who chose love." They married in December, in a small ceremony at the ranch with just a handful of witnesses. Mrs. Fletcher from the boarding house, who had become something of a friend to Penelope, the marshal from Lordsburg who had taken a liking to Elias, and a few of the neighboring ranchers who had come to respect the work they were doing. There was no fancy dress or elaborate celebration, just Penelope in her best calico and Elias in his cleanest shirt, standing together as the sun set and promising to love each other through whatever came. That night, in the house they had worked so hard to make a home, Elias carried her over the threshold and set her down gently in the bedroom they would now share. "Are you nervous?" he asked, his voice tender. "A little," Penelope admitted, "but more excited than nervous." He smiled, that warm, real smile that she loved, and kissed her softly. "We have all the time in the world. There is no rush." But Penelope reached up and pulled him down to her, tired of waiting, tired of being careful. "I want you," she whispered against his mouth. "I want to be your wife in every way." What happened next was gentle and sweet and awkward in the way of first times, but it was theirs. Elias was patient and careful, making sure she was comfortable, that she felt safe and loved. And when it was over, they lay tangled together in the darkness, her head on his chest, his arm around her, both marveling at the miracle of finding each other. "I never thought I could be this happy," Penelope murmured. "Neither did I," Elias said, pressing a kiss to her hair. "But here we are." The years that followed were not easy, but they were good. The ranch slowly prospered under their combined efforts. They expanded the herd, bought more land, built a bigger barn. There were setbacks, of course. A hard winter that took 3 head of cattle, a summer drought that reminded them both of harder times, occasional trouble with rustlers or wild animals. But they faced everything together, their partnership deepening with each challenge overcome. They heard nothing more from Marcus Cray, though Elias made inquiries through his contacts. The man had apparently left New Mexico entirely, heading into Arizona territory. Elias kept the information about the Colorado murder ready, just in case, but as the months passed with no sign of Cray, they began to relax. It was in their 2nd year of marriage that Penelope realized she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks but had not wanted to say anything until she was certain. When she finally told Elias, he picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. "Careful," she gasped, laughing too. "You will make me dizzy." He set her down immediately, his hands gentle on her still flat stomach. "Are you feeling all right? Do you need anything? Should you be resting more?" "I am pregnant, not made of glass," Penelope said, amused by his sudden anxiety. "I can still work." "But you should not have to," Elias insisted. "I can hire someone to help with the house, to Elias," Penelope said firmly, taking his face in her hands. "I will be fine. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. I am strong, and I will tell you if I need to rest." He nodded, but she could see the worry in his eyes. "I just want you safe," he said. "Both of you." "We will be," Penelope promised, though she felt her own flutter of fear. Childbirth was dangerous, she knew. Her own mother had lost 2 babies before Penelope, and the memory of those losses still ached, but the pregnancy progressed well. Penelope felt tired and sick in the early months, but Elias was there for all of it, holding her hair when she was ill, bringing her water and crackers in the morning, rubbing her feet in the evening. As her belly grew, he became even more protective, insisting she rest more, taking over tasks she had always done. "You are going to drive me mad with all this hovering," Penelope told him one day, half exasperated, half touched. "I cannot help it," Elias said, his hand on her swollen stomach feeling the baby kick. "Every time I think about what is happening, what you are doing, growing this child, I am amazed and terrified." "I am terrified too," Penelope admitted. "But we will face it together, just like everything else." Their son was born on a warm May evening, with Mrs. Fletcher acting as midwife and Elias pacing outside the bedroom door like a caged animal. The labor was long and painful, and there were moments when Penelope thought she could not do it, could not push any more, could not survive this. But Mrs. Fletcher was calm and encouraging, and the thought of Elias waiting, of the life they were bringing into the world, gave her strength. When the baby finally came, squalling and red-faced and perfect, Penelope felt a surge of love so powerful it brought tears to her eyes. Mrs. Fletcher cleaned him quickly and laid him on Penelope's chest, and she stared down at this tiny person, this piece of her and Elias, with wonder. "You can bring the father in now," Mrs. Fletcher said, smiling. Elias burst through the door as though he had been shot from a cannon, his face pale and anxious. But when he saw Penelope holding their son, his expression transformed into something that could only be described as awe. "A boy," Penelope said, her voice hoarse from screaming. "We have a son." Elias came to the bedside, his movements tentative as though afraid he might break something. He looked at the baby, then at Penelope, then back at the baby. "He is perfect," he breathed. "You are both perfect." "Do you want to hold him?" Penelope asked. Elias nodded but looked terrified as Mrs. Fletcher showed him how to support the baby's head. When his son was finally in his arms, Elias stared down at him with such naked love that Penelope felt her heart might burst. "Hello," Elias whispered to the baby. "Hello, little one, I am your father, and I promise you I will always keep you safe. I will always make sure you have choices. You will be loved every day of your life." Penelope felt tears slip down her cheeks. What should we name him? They had discussed names throughout the pregnancy, but had never quite settled on one. Now, looking at their son, Penelope knew exactly what felt right. "What about Daniel?" she suggested. "It means God is my judge. It feels right somehow. Like a promise that he will always have a chance to be judged fairly, to be seen for who he really is." "Daniel Keller," Elias said, testing the name. He looked at Penelope, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "It is perfect. He is perfect. You are perfect. I do not know how I got this lucky." "We both got lucky," Penelope said. She reached out and took Elias's free hand, squeezing it tightly. "The day you rode up to my father's homestead, the day you gave me a choice, that was the day my real life began." Those early months with Daniel were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. The baby needed constant care, waking every few hours to eat, crying for reasons Penelope could not always decipher. But Elias was there for all of it, walking the floor with Daniel when he was fussy, changing diapers without complaint, giving Penelope breaks to rest or bathe or simply breathe. "You are a wonderful father," Penelope told him one night, watching as he sang softly to Daniel, rocking him gently. "I am trying," Elias said. "I never had much of an example, but I know what I do not want to be. I will never make him feel invisible. I will never treat him like property or a burden. He will always know he is loved." As Daniel grew from infant to toddler, the ranch continued to prosper. They hired 2 hands to help with the cattle, good men who worked hard and respected Penelope and Elias both. The house expanded, Elias adding on 2 more rooms so they would have space for Daniel and any future children. The garden became a small orchard, with apple and peach trees that would take years to fruit, but promised abundance in time. When Daniel was 2, Penelope became pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was easier, perhaps because she knew what to expect. Their daughter, Sarah, was born in the autumn, a quieter baby than her brother had been, with Elias's dark eyes and Penelope's stubborn chin. "Two children," Elias marveled, holding Sarah while Daniel tried to climb onto the bed to see his new sister. "Our family keeps growing. Are you happy?" Penelope asked, though she could see the answer in his face. "I did not know this kind of happiness existed," Elias said. "Some days I wake up and have to remind myself this is real, that you are real, that our children are real, that this life we built is really ours." The years passed, each one adding to their story. Daniel grew into a serious, thoughtful boy, fascinated by animals and always bringing home injured birds or orphaned rabbits for his mother to help heal. Sarah was more adventurous, climbing trees and riding horses almost before she could walk properly. They had another son, Matthew, when Daniel was 5, and then one more daughter, Emma, 3 years after that. Their home was full of noise and love and the beautiful chaos of children growing up. Penelope and Elias worked hard to give their children the stability and affection neither of them had fully known. They taught them to work, to respect the land and animals, to treat all people with dignity regardless of their heritage or circumstances. "You remember you have choices," Elias would tell them often, particularly as they got older. "You are not trapped by what you are born into. You can choose kindness. You can choose courage. You can choose love." Occasionally, someone in town would make an ignorant comment about Elias's Apache blood or about the unconventional way he and Penelope had come together. The children heard these things sometimes, came home with questions or hurt feelings. Penelope and Elias would sit them down and explain, as best they could, about prejudice and fear, about how some people needed to feel superior to others to feel secure. "But why do they care what we are?" Daniel asked once, maybe 10 years old, after a particularly ugly incident in town. "Because they are scared," Elias explained. "Scared people often become cruel people. They do not understand that there are different ways to live, different kinds of families, and that scares them." "I am not scared of being different," Daniel said. "Good," Penelope said, hugging him close. "Being different is not something to fear. It is something to celebrate. Your father and I are different from many people, and that is part of what makes us strong." As the children grew, so did the ranch. What had started as a desperate purchase of failing land had become one of the most successful ranches in the area. Elias's careful breeding program produced strong, healthy cattle that fetched good prices in Lordsburg and beyond. Penelope's instinct for the land led them to discover a second water source on the property, a spring that allowed them to expand even further. They bought neighboring parcels as they became available, always paying fair prices, always treating their sellers with respect. They became known as people who could be trusted, who kept their word, who helped neighbors in times of trouble. When drought hit the area again, 15 years after that first hard summer, the Keller Ranch was one of the few that could afford to help struggling families with loans and work. They never forgot what it felt like to be desperate, and they made sure their children understood that prosperity came with responsibility. Penelope never saw or heard from her father again. She learned through gossip that he had made it to California, but what happened to him after that remained a mystery. For a while, she thought she should feel something about his absence, anger or grief, or the need for closure. But eventually, she realized she had already moved past him. The day Elias had given her a choice, the day she had chosen to stay and build a new life. She had closed the door on Martin Thompson and everything he represented. On their 20th anniversary, Elias surprised her with a gift. They were sitting on the porch, as they still did most evenings, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. Their children were grown, or nearly so. Daniel was 22 and working alongside his father as a full partner in the ranch. Sarah was 20 and engaged to a young rancher from Silver City. Matthew was 17 and talking about going to school to study veterinary medicine, and Emma was 14 and determined to be a horse trainer. Elias handed Penelope a small wooden box, worn smooth from handling. She opened it to find a gold ring, simple and beautiful, with a small turquoise stone set in the center. "Turquoise for the New Mexico sky," Elias said softly. "The sky that was above us the day we met, the day everything changed." Penelope felt tears prick her eyes as she slipped the ring onto her finger, adding it to the simple gold band he had given her on their wedding day. "It is beautiful." 20 years, Elias said, taking her hand. 20 years since I rode up to your father's homestead and saw you standing there. 20 years since I gave you a choice. And I chose you, Penelope said, completing the familiar refrain. "Best choice I ever made." "Want to know a secret?" Elias asked, his eyes warm. "Always. I was not supposed to be on that road that day," he said. "I had heard about your father's land from someone in Deeming, and I was planning to come out the next week. But I woke up that morning with this feeling, this sense that I needed to go right then. I almost ignored it. I had work to do, supplies to buy. But something kept pulling at me, insisting that I had to go that day. So I did, and there you were." Penelope felt a shiver run through her. She had never heard this part before. "You think it was fate?" "I think it was a gift," Elias said. "A chance for both of us to be saved. You needed someone to give you a choice, and I needed someone to choose me. We needed each other, and somehow we found each other at exactly the right moment." They sat quietly for a moment, the enormity of those 20 years settling around them like a blanket. All the work and worry, all the joy and sorrow, all the ordinary moments that had built a life. "Do you ever think about that day?" Penelope asked. "About what would have happened if you had not come?" "Sometimes," Elias admitted. "Late at night when I cannot sleep, I think about it. And it terrifies me. The thought of a world where I did not know you, where our children do not exist, where this life is not ours, it is like looking into a void." "But you did come," Penelope said firmly. "You came and you gave me a choice, and I chose you. That is what matters. That is what is real." "You are right," Elias said, pulling her close. "You are always right." She laughed and settled against him, her head on his shoulder, watching as the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky. From inside the house, she could hear their children laughing about something, their voices carrying through the open windows. The sounds of home, of family, of the life they had built together. Daniel married a few years later, bringing his wife Mary to live on the ranch. They built a small house on the northern section of the property, near the stream that had first drawn Elias to this land. Sarah married her rancher and moved to Silver City, but she visited often, bringing her growing family to meet their grandparents. Matthew went east for his veterinary training but promised to return, wanting to use his skills to help ranchers and farmers in New Mexico. Emma opened a horse training business, gaining a reputation throughout the territory for her skill and patience. Penelope and Elias became grandparents, then great-grandparents, watching as their family tree spread and grew. They slowed down as the years passed, their bodies no longer able to do the hard physical work of ranching. But they were still active, still engaged, still deeply in love. "Did you ever imagine this?" Penelope asked one evening when she was 65, Elias 67. They were sitting in their familiar spot on the porch, watching their great-grandson chase chickens around the yard. "When you were 15 and alone, did you ever imagine you would have all of this?" "Never," Elias said. I thought I would be alone forever. I thought I would always be on the outside, never quite belonging anywhere. He squeezed her hand. You gave me a place to belong. You gave me a home. We gave each other a home, Penelope corrected. Neither of us could have done this alone. As the sun set on that day, on that life they had built together, Penelope felt a profound sense of peace. She had been traded for a rifle once, treated as property by the man who should have protected her. But then a cowboy had ridden into her life and given her something she had never truly had before, a choice. And she had chosen love. She had chosen courage. She had chosen a life of hard work and deep joy, of children and grandchildren and a legacy that would outlast them both. Elias died first, quietly in his sleep at the age of 74. Penelope held his hand through that last night, talking to him about their life, about their children, about the day they met, and all the days that had followed. She told him she loved him, would always love him, would carry him in her heart until they met again. She lived another 5 years after he passed, surrounded by family, still sharp and engaged despite her age. She told their story often to her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, wanting them to understand where they came from, what their family was built on. Your grandfather gave me a choice, she would say. In a time and place where women rarely had choices, where people like him were not always treated fairly, he offered me freedom. And I chose him. I chose love. Remember that when life gets hard. Remember that you always have a choice about what kind of person you will be, how you will treat others, whether you will choose fear or love. On a warm spring morning, not unlike the one on which her son Daniel had been born so many years ago, Penelope passed away peacefully, surrounded by 3 generations of the family she and Elias had created. Her last words were his name, spoken with love and joy, as though she could already see him waiting for her. They buried her beside Elias on a hill overlooking the ranch, under the vast New Mexico sky they had both loved so much. The turnout for her funeral was enormous. Children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, of course, but also neighbors and friends, people whose lives had been touched by her kindness and strength over the years. The minister who presided was Matthew, their son, who had not become a veterinarian after all but had found his calling in serving people instead of animals. My parents taught us that love is a choice, Matthew said in his eulogy. Not just a feeling, but an active decision you make every day. They chose each other, and then they chose us, and they chose this community. They chose kindness and courage and hard work. They chose to build something good and true and lasting. And because of their choices, all of us are here today. Their legacy is not just this ranch or this land. Their legacy is all of us, and the love we carry forward into the world. Daniel, now in his 50s, stood beside his father's grave after the service, his own children and grandchildren around him. He thought about the stories his mother had told him, about the desperate girl she had been, about the cowboy who had saved her not with violence but with choice. He thought about the life they had built, the love that had sustained them through everything. Thank you, he said quietly to the ground where they lay, for choosing each other, for choosing all of us. The ranch continued for generations, passed down through the family, each generation adding to the story while honoring its roots. The original house was preserved, turned into a kind of family museum, where great-great-great-grandchildren could see the simple home where it all began. The porch where Penelope and Elias had spent so many evenings remained, weathered but sturdy, a testament to the foundation they had built. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the sky turned gold and the stars began to emerge, people would swear they could feel something on that porch. Not a ghost, exactly, but a presence. A reminder of what was possible when someone offered a choice, and someone else was brave enough to take it. A reminder that love, real love, the kind that lasts beyond death, is built on respect and trust and the daily decision to keep choosing each other, no matter what comes. The story of Penelope Thompson and Elias Keller became a legend in that part of New Mexico, told and retold, each version adding some embellishment. But at its core, the story remained the same. A girl was traded for a rifle. A cowboy gave her a choice, and she chose him. And from that choice, from that moment of courage and kindness, came a love story that outlasted them both, rippling forward through time, touching every life that came after. Years turned into decades, decades into centuries, but the Keller Ranch remained, a testament to what two people could build when they chose love over fear, partnership over possession, freedom over control. The land they had worked so hard to heal flourished. The water sources they had found sustained not just their descendants but neighboring ranches as well. The values they had instilled in their children, the importance of choice and dignity and treating all people with respect, became woven into the fabric of their family identity. Historians would later write about the Keller Ranch as an example of successful multicultural integration in the post-Civil War American West, noting how Elias Keller's Apache heritage had been honored and passed down through generations, how his and Penelope's partnership had created a model of equality unusual for their time. But those clinical analyses missed the heart of the story, the beating core of it. That a girl who had been treated as property and a boy who had been told he belonged nowhere had found each other and built a place where everyone belonged. The turquoise ring Elias had given Penelope on their 20th anniversary was passed down through the female line, each generation choosing one daughter to carry it forward. With it came the story, the reminder of where they came from and what mattered most. And every woman who wore that ring understood. Love is a choice, freedom is precious, and the courage to build something new from the ruins of the past is the greatest legacy anyone can leave. In the end, the story of Penelope and Elias was not about being saved, though there was saving involved. It was not about being rescued, though there was rescue. It was about two people who recognized something essential in each other, who saw past what the world had done to them to what they could become together. It was about the power of offering someone a choice and the bravery of taking it. It was about building a life and a love that mattered, that lasted, that changed everything that came after. And on warm spring evenings, when the New Mexico sky turned gold and the stars began their ancient dance, if you stood on that old porch and listened carefully, you might almost hear it. The sound of two voices, soft and content, talking about their day, planning tomorrow, living the life they chose together. The cowboy and the girl who was once traded for a rifle, forever bound by the choice that saved them both.